Assalamu alaikum. Peace. It's Fatimah, Coach Fatimah, 1/3 of Outstanding Personal Relationships and co-author of the new book, Let's Talk Polygamy Uncensored. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this live webinar that I'm having. I wanted to make sure that I do that first and foremost. And this specific webinar is about how to share your husband without destroying your marriage. It's a question I've been asked often times. They want to know what I'm doing. What are the best practices for the best results for long-term success in polygyny? So with that being said, I will be back after these short, important messages. Make sure you have something to write with and write on. And I'm back once again, Coach Fatimah, for those of you that are new, and welcome to this live webinar. First, before we begin, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to make sure that you all let me know where you're tuning in from, how you're doing, how's the weather, and on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you for this specific webinar? Now, that doesn't mean the subject is particularly easy, but the information is exciting and it will be very valuable and helpful prayerfully. Now, before we start, let's make sure again that you have something to write with and write on. I will be sharing my screen with you all as I have the presentation prepared. So you'll see me kind of zooming in, zooming out, but I'm still here with you. So make sure that you stay tuned for this information. So what I want to do is start off sharing my screen like I was saying. And this is much to do with a little bit of crowd participation. So I'll be asking you some questions throughout. Just make sure you leave them in the comments. And again, let me know where you are chiming in from and how you are doing. So, excuse me, I'm going to begin. So let me just make sure everything here, and it's a little bit behind the scenes, make sure everything is going well thus far. So yes, I'm going to welcome you, and we're going to go into the agenda on how to share your husband without destroying your marriage. I've been asked it many times. Like I said before, very, very important question. And it matters. And polygyny, again, is not just happening to us, it's happening to our husbands as well, as he might be new to it, just like we are. But I'll get into that a little bit more. So for today, we're going to do a little introduction, as I did, and the overview of how to share your husband without destroying your marriage. And that has much to do with perspective, purpose, and peace. Sharing your husband a closer look. So we're going to talk about communication for respectful relationships and building and maintaining trust and things of that nature as well, because it's very important for the long-term success. And I love to say long-term success in marriage, and specifically in polygyny, because who gets married to say, look, I want a short-term marriage. I don't want it to be successful. I want it to crash and burn. I don't know too many people that said that and that desired for that to happen. Now, the purpose of this specific information and this webinar is so that we can kind of dissect a little bit about relationships and polygyny and continuing that education on how we as wives experience polygyny and how it can be fulfilling for us and, of course, our spouse long term. It's just really about having a specific understanding. So this is relationship education. I knew that I had to make sure that I became an educated wife in relationships. So I had to do my research and travel and get under some really great mentors and do the work and go through the ups and downs, and know that there was a learning curve, not only for me, but for my husband as well. And also to get familiar with some skills and some knowledge in order to build and maintain a strong relationship. And this education is interactive. So we want to get excited. And I want to know in the comments, make sure you leave it in the comments, how many of you are excited to get this information? I am. I didn't think that where I came from that I'd be doing this type of work or teaching or training or coaching or counseling, but I'm so grateful that I am. So now that I can be excited, because I want to be part of the solution and the OPR team as well, and not part of the problem. We have so many people contributing to the problem, but hardly enough people contributing to the solution. So I'm excited about this information. It's really life-changing if you think about it, because there's so much that we go through in our lives that we don't have clarity on. And this is not specifically an easy thing to talk about or discuss, but we are absolutely going to make sure we get into the information as we should. Some materials that you're going to need: a willingness to learn. I tell everybody, listen, if you want to learn information, you got to be able to absorb it, retain it, recall it, review it. Okay. Worksheets. Have something to write with. Again, something to write with and write on. You're going to want a journal. And another thing that I always needed in order to get information or be in a training or be able to receive that specific type of information or training is a peaceful state of mind. So I encourage you to be in a space that's peaceful, and maybe let's minimize some of the interruptions. I'm a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm many things. I wear many hats. So I know what it's like to need a peaceful, quiet space uninterrupted. Now, because I'm a mother, I know that I was shooting a podcast episode with my awesome co-wife, Coach Nyla, and my 10-year-old son, he walked right in the middle of it. And I said, yep, we're going to keep it because this is life and we do get interrupted. So I know what it's like to go through that. So let's make sure we just minimize it if we can. Now, my methods, the Coach Fatimah method. I help or aid or assist women identify key concepts for marital success and fulfillment. I'm pretty straightforward. I like to shoot straight from the hip because I like to get to the solution or offer it first and foremost after I get the information from the people that I need. I want to make sure that I can get to the solution. That doesn't mean being rude. That just means being firm and being direct. But we're going to have a little bit of fun as well. And I want to encourage you to put these practices into your day-to-day practices, these techniques, because they work. We want something that's going to work for us, not something that just sounds nice, but something that we want to implement. Pro tip, I have to say this: accountability is a superpower. Sometimes we don't want to hold ourselves accountable, but receiving this information, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we have in order to implement it. Now, you don't have to, absolutely not. However, and I always like to share this because it's always important to share, you also don't have to have a healthy or a successful poly journey either, or marriage. Somebody offered that to me. They're like, you don't have to do the work, but don't ask for the reward or the success either, because you can't have both. You got to, it's not a game, but you have to play your part and do your part in order to be successful in your marriage, especially in polygyny. And embracing change is so valuable because we don't know what's on the other side of change. We're afraid of change because we don't know what to expect. But oftentimes healing and the things that we find rewarding or fulfilling in life are on the other side of change. I knew it was for me. I didn't think it was, but it absolutely was. So I want to make sure that I tell you that and I share that with you as well. So let's just go back here. I'll go back a little bit. into something is happening with my presentation. So just one second. And it's this is again, this is like behind the scenes. It's really what happens sometimes is there's technical stuff, and this is part of it. So let's get into let's meet your coach. And a lot of people say, who's Coach Fatimah and what is her story? And you'll see a number of different pictures here, but I want to share something special with you very quickly. And it's a little bit more about me and who I am and my story. And I won't be so arrogant as to think everybody knows who I am. They know my story. They know how I became a coach and all these things like that. So let's share this with you. Okay, that's a little bit about me. And one thing that really was interesting about that particular video was that upon creation, I was seeing my grandparents and my parents and how their relationships were not successful anymore, and they ultimately ended in brokenness. And one thing that kind of was difficult for me was that I I knew I didn't want that for myself. So what they kind of taught me to do is what not to do. So a lot of people say, well, why did you want to get married? Why did you want to start a family? Because I saw this brokenness in the families and the relationships that were trying to be successful at first. And by the time I was 3, my parents did break up. And then ultimately my grandparents broke up. So I knew I didn't want those things. And I kind of grew up in this environment that was toxic, and people didn't know how to communicate and embrace each other's different perspectives, or they didn't have a certain purpose or goals in life. So I knew that was something that was important to me specifically, because I didn't see that really growing up. And I ultimately became Muslim, and that was a whole nother journey. So I was experiencing a new religion, a new way of life, and being a wife and a mother all in the same year. And I also lost my grandfather that year as well. So I learned so much and I grew a lot within that year, but I also was dealing with a lot of pain. So it was important for me to protect my family. So a part of that was understanding that I wanted to be home with my kids. And I said, oh, my husband will work, and I'll be at home with the kids. And this is just how it's going to be. And nothing's ever going to change. Only thing's going to change is that our kids get older. We'll change ages. We'll get older, but nothing else. There won't be polygyny. There won't be anything. And I had it kind of narrowed down, because I was used to what I was kind of used to, but I knew I had to unlearn some things as well and live a life that was, understanding a perspective that was not just my own, but I had to understand that my husband had his own perspective as well. And I didn't know the world of men in the way in which he knew it. So I know a lot of wives do kind of struggle with that, specifically not knowing, okay, this is different than what I want, and some things might change, but how do I embrace that change? How do I embrace specifically polygyny if it's going to enter my life, or if I'm in it now, what do I do? And there's some core issues that many of us, and I've coached and counseled some clients on this as well, have some difficulty embracing. If not, some women just reject it, period. They're like, I'm not going to deal with it at all. I'm going to take the children, and that's it. I'm not doing anything else. So let's get right into this, because this is really vital information. So one thing that I knew that I had to kind of learn for myself is, again, perspectives, purpose, and peace in polygyny. And even in monogamy, because we're pro-moral. So we talk about monogamy and polygyny. We train on both, because we're monogamously married to the same man, my co-wife and I. So monogamy and polygyny is important. So, but also understanding the different perspectives and purpose, and ultimately having peace in both is important as well. It's a lot to do with mindset mastery and mastering your mindset specifically. So what we're going to talk about right now is perspective in marriage, and especially polygyny. Understanding that men and women are not the same. We are completely different. We have different perspectives. So I can go to my husband and say, what is your experience of me in our specific marriage? And then he can tell me. And then if he asks me that, I can tell him. Could it be that it's facts? Maybe not, but it's our experience of one another. But each perspective, each experience matters. Now, one thing that men and women can differ on is the topics of marriage, relationships, love, betrayal, trust, loyalty, specifically loyalty. Loyalty is major in polygyny, and I'll get into that, and much more. We share differences of opinions on those things. Now, loyalty is major because some of us, or some wives, might look at loyalty differently than their husbands do. And I'll get into that. But let's first talk about understanding perspective, the different perspectives of our spouse. Now, our spouses might measure success in a relationship differently, but when they do, when you embrace a different perspective that's not your own, it can deepen your connection with empathy, trust with your relationship or your marriage, and respect. And ultimately, there'll be a certain amount of endearment within that relationship. What I did and what I invite others to do that are wives in polygyny. One thing that I wish I had have shown up more as within my own marriage is a friend to my husband. Because when I'm not just hyper focused in wife mode, then I knew, okay, he needs a friend in this moment to show up in this moment. Now, this isn't to say this was a one-sided thing and I was doing everything and offering everything. No, we both were offering so much to one another. But sometimes it's not readily identifiable to us that our spouse is offering us something. And oftentimes it's grace, and oftentimes it's information and respectful communication. Although the topic might not be easy, they're offering us something. So, the importance of purpose, let's get into that. Living in a purposeful life can bring a sense of fulfillment. One thing I had to learn is that my worlds or my life was starting to evolve around my husband and my daughter when I first became married. I was like, yep, let's make sure they have everything they need. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for what I need. And nobody asked me to do it that way. Nobody said, look, put you on the back burner. And then what I was encouraged to do was quite opposite. Take care of you, then help with us, but I didn't see it right away. I said, no, this is my role. I'm supposed to just focus on the two of them and make sure they have everything they need. But then I'm getting met with, did you eat today? Did you sit down today? Did you take a nap today? Because I wasn't doing those things. So I had a pattern. And I find that a lot of women have this pattern. But when we have a life that's purposeful and we have goals of our own, it can provide us with direction, motivation, and a sense of accomplishment. I have so much more of that in more recent years, recent meaning in the past, probably 10 or more years, because I have so much outside of just motherhood. I had it then too, but I'm reprioritizing things. I had to reprioritize things. And I tell my clients the same thing. Make sure you have a purpose for your own life. That doesn't mean we ignore our husband and our children. They're very important. They're our family, right? However, if you think about if you've ever traveled in a plane, no one says, okay, you're going to put their mask on first, then you put yours on. No, it's quite the opposite, because I can't help you if I'm not helping or providing for myself first. Something that's nourishing me first. That doesn't mean I ignore you. I'm going to get to you and you're important as well, but I have to take care of me first. So when we have a life of purpose, what happens is it provides us with clarity. So we get clarity on our goals. And again, it increases motivation and it creates a meaning for our life, and it boosts resilience. So one thing I knew once I had that purpose in my own life, I was able to deal with things evenly as they came, because I wasn't spreading myself so thin. And I was really bad at that. And I didn't want to ask for help when I knew I needed it. So having a great support system matters as well. So I have a question. Who wants a marriage of mediocrity? Now, if you want that, let me see your hands and put it in the comments. Who wants a marriage of mediocrity? I don't. And I don't know too many people that say that they do. Not too many people say that they do, because who wants to strive to be mediocre? Most people do want to strive for excellence and be outstanding at what they are doing. And that's important. It's very important. I had to understand the importance of that, and I'll keep repeating parts of my story because I can relate to not having the success that I necessarily wanted, but I was also standing in my own way too. And I had to get out of my own way in order to reach success. And I'm still learning. So this is key. Understanding that men and women actually practice or put purpose in the practice in different ways. Okay. Both genders are able to have the capability of having a clear sense of direction and motivation. So we might pursue different goals, but men might look at things such as being social. They might say, I don't have the need to be very social, but I need to make sure I have career success. So if I run into people and I'm so happen to be social with on the way, then so be it. But for us, We might prioritize caretaking and our family. I know that's, again, something that I actually did. Now, the hard example would be men might feel as though practicing polygyny is being purposeful, while we might feel like, no, we don't want this lifestyle for our husbands, right? It doesn't mean their way is wrong. It just means that it is different for them. And that's kind of a hard truth, of course, because men and women have different different things that they want to accomplish in their lives. They have something that drives them forward differently in their lives. So if you can kind of relate to that, put a thumbs up down in the chat. I know I related to that when I started to understand that the set of responsibilities that I had as a wife and that my husband has as a husband, and now to two women, is much different than what I have to do in my own life. It's different. It doesn't mean his way is wrong. It just means his way is different than mine. What drives him is different. I'm not the father of 10 children and 2 bonus children. I'm not. I don't know how that feels for him unless he shares it with me. He doesn't know how motherhood feels for me unless I share that with him, or unless he's sitting there and he kind of knows my pattern and he can go, oof. She doesn't feel good today, or she's not in a good space today, or maybe she's feeling negative today. And I'm able to identify that because I know her. The thing about men in polygyny is because they have more than one wife or wives, they might have 4 wives. For men that are Muslim, it's up to 4. They have, and I don't like, some people say, oh, the burden of knowing everything. I don't call, they have the honor of knowing everything. They are supposed to know what's going on with the women in their lives, their wives. They have to have that information because they want to be part of the solution. Now, I'm not talking about men that might not be healthy mentally. I'm talking about men that want polygyny to work, and they're not just here for a little while and then they're out the door, and then they're marrying a group of other women, and then they drop those women, and then they're marrying a group of other women. I have to say that because we've been asked it a multitude of times. Well, what about those that just are here today, gone tomorrow? Well, they're who they're going to be. We have to decide that we want to participate in that type of practices. Or do we want to be in relationships, in the marriage? When I say relationships, in a marriage with a man that's here for the long term, because they operate much differently than the ones that don't want to be here long term. So let's talk about peace in a relationship and how men and women view it. This is a study that was conducted at a university, and they found that women tend to prioritize emotional intimacy and connection in their relationships, while men tend to prioritize aspects such as shared responsibility and, in some cases, sexual satisfaction. Men's sex drive and women's sex drives are different. They're not the same at all. At all. I learned that at a young age. I learned that all throughout my life with the men that were in my life, meaning my grandfather, my father, my brother, and ultimately my husband. I learned that men do love more than one woman at a time. I remember my brother making a comment, and he was saying, man, he said, you women are so amazing. And he was at this time specifically speaking of Muslim women. My brother's not Muslim, he's Christian. And he was saying, man, if I could just have 2 women that fulfilled me in this way. And he wasn't saying to sexual nature, but he was like, to have more than one wife that's beautiful, to have more than one wife that is a great mother to my children. And he went on and on and on and on and on. And he was like, I don't know how I would be able to get that. I said, well, first of all, to attract Muslim wives, you have to be Muslim first and sincere about Islam. And he started cracking up, and he was like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. And I said, well, it doesn't just drop in your lap. No, but I knew what he was trying to say. I knew exactly what he was trying to say. And he didn't mention just one wife. He specifically said in polygyny. And I thought that was not just, I didn't say, oh, that's so cute. I knew why he said it. But I digress and I move on. Women are also more likely to express emotions and seek out validation and support from their partner. I have not had an experience where I've had any of the male of my husband, excuse me, my father and my grandfather since passed, but they didn't walk around saying, I need you to validate me, or I need my wife to validate me, or I need this validation. They didn't speak it, although they were thinking it, and they expressed it in different ways than we did as the women in the family. But what I do know is that when men and women feel validated, they have a tendency to have feelings of respect in their relationship. And again, there's a tremendous value put on that relationship, and we all do want it. But the intensity between men and women is different in that validation. So when men feel disrespected, a few things tend to happen. I've seen men, between men, having a communication or an argument, and one feels disrespected. People can tend to get hurt physically or fatally. And when women feel disrespect between one another, we might operate differently in the conversation. It might not reach physical. It might not reach deadly. But we do know that when men feel disrespect, then it reaches a certain point of no return. And I've seen my father get upset. I've seen my husband get upset. I've seen my grandfather get upset. And people tend to get very quiet when that happens. Even if it's a rare occasion, it gets our attention. So let's get right into why we don't want to share our husbands. There's several reasons why, and I'm sure this list can be bigger, but for time's sake, let's get into some of those reasons because they're important. I mean, we would understand why, but let's just break it down really quickly. For some cultural religious beliefs, that might be a reason. What will people say? There's some jealousy or emotional attachment issues. We might feel disrespected, or there might be a violation of trust. There might be a specific fear of loss, or there might be a devastation to our children. What will they feel? How will it come off to them? A fear of being replaced or abandonment or out mom. We might be the old mom. There might be a new mom, the new mom syndrome. So I've seen many and coached many women that said, you know what, I feel as though my co-wife might outmother me, or he might pick a woman that might outmother me. Now, I've been approached a few times about how do you feel about that? How do you feel about your son being around your co-wife, or your children being around your co-wife? Now, did we all just come together right away? No, it was a process. It was a journey. And I respectfully look back on it and go, these things need to happen in the sequence in which they did, so that they may be a benefit, or I might have learned from them. But one thing that I knew that I had to do as an initial wife, or just a wife, period, was when it came to my children, when it came to them interacting with my co-wife, I said, you know what? If she's healthy and sound, what is the issue with them getting more love and affection from her? They know who their mother is. They know who I am. They know where they live. They know that I love them very deeply. But I also had to understand that if she was willing to offer more love to my children, then that was benefit for them, and they wanted it. And they wanted it, and they embraced it. Did it start out that way? No. So I always want to give this disclaimer, and this disclaimer always matters. If you're new to polygyny and this is brand new to you, understand that please, please, please do not look at our year 13 and measure it up against your year 1 or year 2 or year 3. I had a very close friend of mine, and she's still a close friend of mine. She said, I had to stop following you all on social media. And I was like, why? Because she was such a great supporter. She's following us now, but there was a time where she didn't. And I said, well, why? And she said, it was hard knowing that you all were so happy and I wasn't. And she was like, I'm sorry, but I had to say that. And I embraced her true experience. And I was like, wow. I said, but maybe it's a good thing that you do follow us or you're willing to follow us on social media again, because we're giving information that might be beneficial to you even in the difficult times, you know? And she said, and she follows us again. And it's so funny because she remembers when she made this statement and she's like, oh, it was so silly to not follow you all, because she said it was just hard to see you all happy. I'm like, we don't just sit up and we're happy, happy, happy all the time, because we're still people, right? We're still people, and we're still learning from each other, and we still want to be part of the solution and offer again the best practices for the best results in long-term success in polygyny. So it's about helping other people not feel like this is an impossibility in their life. I remember when I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. And then I started changing the way I asked questions to myself. And I said, well, let's see how it's going to work. But what if it does work? Well, what if I can help make it work? What if I can be part of the solution and be in partnership of it working? You know, because this, again, is not just happening to us, it's happening to our children as well. But I knew some of those reasons why we don't want to share our husbands is because we might have this fear of loss or replacement. And I noticed one thing. I asked one of my clients when she brought this to my attention, I said, why would you feel replaced? I said, did your husband say he's replacing you or he doesn't love you anymore? And she said, no, he never said that. I said, that would be an assumption, because we've been taught this culture of out with the old, in with the new. But let's go on to this next thing, which is really important. Question: who was your first love? Now, within this picture, my first love is in this picture. Now, this is 19, 20-year-old us. And what you don't see, that on my lap is our daughter, who at the time, I believe she was about 5 or 6 months old, and she's on my lap. But this is a really great picture, and this one is one of my favorite pictures. So in the comments, who is your first love? Now, I'll tell you who my first love is. And within this picture, my first love is me. And I had to learn that. I'd say, oh, it's my husband. This is easy. He's right here. He's right in the picture. No, my first love in that picture is Coach Fatimah. Was I always Coach Fatimah? No, I wasn't. I had to grow into the role and into the honor of being Coach Fatimah, because I didn't see that in myself. Coach Nazir saw that person in myself before I did, because I'm like, oh, if I become a coach, then people are going to know my story of struggle. And I don't know if I'm ready for that, you know, to put myself out there like that. But now I knew that I had to do that in order to be the person I am today. And I'm still working on me. I'm not going to ever say, I'm here, I made it, I'm successful completely, and I have nothing else to learn. That's not true. I have tons to learn about who I am and who I strive to become, because it's beyond just a coach, of course. Although this is one of the things that I strive to be, but I had to have someone see it in me before I saw it in myself. And I had to pull it out of there and go, look, if my husband sees this in me and a couple of friends see a coach in me, I need to work on myself a little bit more before I can don the name Coach Fatimah. And I still am. So one of the major things that I had to discover is the next slide, which is understanding why I didn't want to share my husband more in depth. Maybe I felt I was going to be in jeopardy of losing my connection, or I'd be replaced within my family, or my children might have been taken over to my co-wife's house that she shares with our husband. I wouldn't see him as much. And this is not just me. These are some of the things that other wives have made statements about. Unfair treatment, being outmothered, sexual abandonment, ultimately divorce. And some have even brought up, well, they're going to fill me up with diseases. One thing that I know about men that are practicing polygyny in a healthy way is that they don't offer their body to a multitude of women and then a multitude of women and then go back and forth and sharing disease and all this stuff like that. There's a quote, Kings that are clean don't have to worry about queens. They're clean too, and they're going to be cleaned together because they're going to take care of their own individual bodies and their practices, and they're going to care about that. Does everyone do that? No, they don't. But everyone is not a king or a queen. And that's not to say that they need to be worshiped and bowed down to. No, it means they're moving in such a way that is royal. And they care about that. They care about how they look. They care about how they show up in their family. Now, one thing I want to offer you all, and if you're experiencing this webinar as one that is successful and you're getting some good gems from it, make sure you put a thumbs up down in the comment section. I want to see the thumbs up down there. But this I want to share with you. It's called the 7-breath forehead connection repair exercise. That's a lot to say, but this means a lot to a relationship in a marriage. Step 1, you're going to grab your partner, your spouse at an appropriate time. You're not going to rip them away from work. You're not going to tell them to get up and you want them to do this exercise with you and be demanding and rude. Step 2, you're going to ask them again at the appropriate time with love in your heart and some grace, and tell them you want to do something with them that will really, really cause for connection in your relationship. Step 2, you're going to look into each other's eyes and take 7 beautiful breaths. Okay. And this is something that builds connection. Anytime we lock eyes with one another in a loving way, it builds on connection. By the end of those 7 breaths what you're going to do is you're going to offer 7 reasons why you are grateful for them and what they provided for you. That could be in the day. That could be a couple times a week. That could be in the month. What did they provide for you that was beautiful, that you are grateful for? And I love it because they get to hear it in your own voice, real time. Now, you can write it down, but there's nothing like that physical connection with our spouse. It really helps deepen that connection, because when our spouse knows that we're grateful, then they want to do more. But if we're not showing gratitude to them or showing or sharing a compliment with them, it's difficult to keep doing that with us or for us. So the psychology of sharing, one thing I had to come to grips with is taking away the meaning in which I gave the word share specifically. Oh my goodness. I had kind of this toxicity around the word sharing. I'm like, oh my God, if I say the word share, what will people think? What will they say? And then I said, what if I do say the word share and I say it within polygyny and it's healthy? Because I want to be part of the health of my marriage. And I want to be a participant in my marriage, even in polygyny. What if sharing means something that I never thought it meant? Meaning that I'm not just holding my husband for myself. Now, there's a my, or me mentality, especially in the West. Don't share husbands. You don't share children. You don't share your home. You don't. There's so many don'ts. And how dare you even think to share your husband? Now, I remember when I was at my local masjid, this elder in our masjid, she said, you know what? There was a talk there about polygyny, and I was like, yikes. It's like, okay, I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't want to share my husband. And by the end of the talk, the sister, who was an elder that was respected in our community, she said, you know what? Fatimah, a lot more men need to practice polygyny. And she looked right at me, and she was writing in Arabic. She was writing notes in Arabic, and everybody thought it was so cool that she could write Arabic like English. And she said to me, she looked right at me. We were at a table, and it was just myself and the sister. And she said, a lot more men need to do it. She said, including your husband. And her husband was in polygyny. And I said, whoa. She saw a goodness in my own husband that needed to be shared. And I knew it. I didn't fear polygyny because I thought he would just destroy our family and mess it all up and not care. My fear was that he could do it. But I said, if he can do it, then that means I'd have less time with him. Then that means that he'd be providing something for another wife, and he provides that for me. That was the fear. I said, he's going to do his best because he cares about his relationship with Allah. And we're practicing Muslims. And I said, but if he cares about his relationship with Allah, well, then he's going to care about what happens to me within polygyny as well, and what happens to our children, and what happens to our family. Of course, what happens to himself, but he's going to care about our relationship because he already cares about his relationship with Allah. And the part of the beauty in admiring him and in understanding who he is as a husband was understanding that he is going to show up in different areas of his life, and things will fall into place for him because he cares about this relationship that he has with his Lord. I had to understand the magnitude of that and the beauty of it. And I still do. And that's one of my favorite things to do is hear him offer salat, or offer salat with him, or hear him read Quran. I love those things because he's putting things in perspective as a man that practices polygyny. I'm not a woman that practices polygyny. I'm a wife, and I am married to a man that has another wife, and he practices polygyny, but he makes sure that he does it in a way, and he cares about it, and he cares about and loves his family. So one of the major things, and that's what I was speaking of before, I had to control my mindset. So much of sharing our husband is about maintaining a mindset mastery. So in mindset mastery, we're going to review that our husbands are not wives. The men's perspective on polygyny is not the same as the ones that we may hold. And just because they have a certain specific way in which they practice polygyny, and it's or process what's going on with us in our monogamous relationship, it doesn't mean their way is wrong. It just means it's different. And one of the major things that I had to do, and it's paramount to the success of my own marriage and what I coach and counsel women on, is living our life outside of just the label of wife and having our own purpose. What are we doing as a mother? What are we doing as a friend or a sibling or a daughter in our lives, an entrepreneur, an author, an artist? I know I have to do art outside of being an entrepreneur. I have to specifically be a mother to my children. So polygyny allowed me a certain amount of time with my children, that they're children under me, but they're grown women. 2 of my daughters are married. 2 of my daughters are not married, but they want to get married, but they're not in that space yet in their life. But we need to have conversations. We need to hang out with one another. We need to educate one another. And I needed more time as my children grew unbeknownst to me. Now, my husband was always there. He was always in the home. He was always parenting our children with me. But is he there all the time? No, he's always available to us unless he's out of town or whatever the case may be. He sees all of us in a family every day. Can every man do that? No, there might be geography. There might be different things that don't allow him to do that. And in order, another major key or key component of being in polygyny long term is being in support of peace, being peaceful. Just because we're peaceful doesn't mean we don't need to have a hard conversation with our husband. It doesn't mean that we don't have to revisit some things, or change some goals. We might need to do that as women. I know I have to go over my goals and say, I reached that goal. What's the next one for the next month or the next week? And one of the most important questions that I ask my clients is that, do you want your husband to win? I had to ask it of myself. So I offer it to my clients as well, and I offer it to you as well. Do you want your husband to win in polygyny? Do you want him to win, period? I know I want my husband to win every day. I'm cheering him on every day. I'm trying to find a compliment to offer him every day. I want to celebrate the things that he's doing every day because I see him. He sees me. I know he loves me. I know he wants to be married to me. He's not the one that had issue in polygyny. I was like, wait a minute. But then I had to go, he wants me to win as well. So I said, if I want him to win, he's going to make sure that he's doing everything that he needs to do in order to do that for our family, though. For our family. He matters. Everyone in our family matters. They matter to me. They matter to him. They matter to my co-wife. They matter to our children within this family, whether they be adults, whether they be our little kids in our family. Everybody matters. But I said with the leadership, with the husband in the family, oh, we all matter. And he loves us very deeply. And he strives every day. And I said, I want that man. I want a man like that to win because he wants us to win. We have a common goal in our family in order to not injure each other mentally, physically, or spiritually and move forward together. Is everybody at that space? Is everybody ready to do that just yet? No, they're not. No, they're not. Everybody has a different learning curve. But I knew going in, and I know now full well that we all have common goals to support peace in this family. And if we have to have hard conversations, we do that, but they're not hostile conversations. Do we experience hurt in polygyny as wives? Yes, we do. But one of the questions that I had to ask myself, and I invite you to ask yourself the same, was it intentional or was it unintentional? I had to get familiar with those terms. People say all the time, oh, Coach Fatimah, your husband hurt you. I said, yeah, but it wasn't intentional. And we've sat and we've talked about this. And we've talked about our pain. So it wasn't just, oh, he went around campaigning and hurting me. Do you think I have not said anything to him that hurt his feelings? You would be wrong. Do you think I've not done anything that would hurt his feelings? You would be wrong. It would be so inaccurate. And I'm woman enough to say that. But I'm also woman enough to apologize. And I invite us all to do that if that needs to be done. But having the hard conversation and making sure we don't put our forgiveness on this yo-yo and say, oh, yeah, I forgive him. Yeah, you hurt me. Yeah, I forgive you. And then we're back at his neck the next day or the next week or the next month, or we keep circling the wagon around the same thing. Because one thing as wives that we don't have the privilege or capacity to do is tell our husbands, get rid of this person. I don't like this. You can say it, but you can't remove them. So part of sharing my husband, or part of us sharing our husbands is in polygyny, is having the maturity to say, this is the set of responsibilities that this man has to see through. So I can't ask him, stay here three nights and stay over there 4 and forget the other wife's, rights. I don't care about that. He has every right to say, well, I do. And I have to make sure that I see my responsibilities through. But if we're hurting one another and hurt is inevitable, we need to have a conversation about how not to do that again. We have a responsibility to ourselves to be concerned about our happiness. I don't look at my husband and tell him, you need to get on this happiness and make me happy and hurry up and get it done now. Hurry up. Get on it. What I do is I say, these are some concerns that I have, but I don't package those concerns as demands. And I say, get on this stuff now, fix this stuff now, or else. Nobody likes a threat. Nobody likes a threat, because then I'll question my own self about my character if I'm hurling threats. I really do. Yes. Yes. Having a respect and a certain amount of poise while we're having these conversations. That's why I was saying having hostile conversations. What is that going to get us? Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all so much. If you guys are getting some beneficial gems, put a thumbs up in the chat, smiley face, heart, whatever it is. I really do appreciate that. But the thing is maturity, having a sense of maturity when we're going through these times with our husbands. If I could just, I remember, if I don't know if you guys remember, D.L. Hughley was talking about a child that he had, and it wasn't about the child or this outside relationship, because I won't ever equate that to polygyny. However, his wife was saying, and this was life changing. It really was. He was saying that his wife told him, I wish you had to talk to me about it so I could have helped you through that time. That took me out. And it takes a lot to take me out because I've been through a lot of stuff. And it takes a lot for me to, thank you for your thumbs up. It takes a lot for me to cry. But that touched me in a way. I said, wow, she's so mature to say to him, I wish you had told me so that I could have helped you through that time. Because this is something, and I'll share this with you all. I've shared this before, but I remember thinking back when I started my healing journey. Nobody started it for me. But when I decided to start it, I thought back on when it was just Coach Nazir, and he was kind of, the kids would get together on these play dates. And he absolutely was such a trooper in making that happen, because I just wasn't ready to talk yet, because I thought this polygyny was something for him. I was like, I don't know how I could help. I make the kids some food, give them some hugs, some kisses, watch some shows with them, play with them. But I was like, I don't see why I need to talk to my co-wife. I think she's for him. And I didn't know the full story. Not until I talked to her, and I encourage co-wives when that time is appropriate, when it comes to discuss some things with each other. It doesn't mean you have to be face to face, but maybe connect with one another, because sometimes you'll ask questions of your husband and it's not that he's not equipped to answer them. However, since he's not the co-wife, he'll answer the questions differently. But I remember thinking back, and I said, he must have been incredibly lonely in that time, where he was going back and forth and play dates and picking the kids up and spending time and doing so many things on his own, just as a husband trying to get it done. And I really applaud him for that. But I said he must have been kind of lonely in that time. And I was like, well, he ain't going to be lonely no more, because I'm finna help. And it just was like that. And my co-wife was always willing to help, because she comes from a massive family herself. Massive, massive. She's the oldest of 9. And I get why this made sense to her, because this is all she's known. So she's been really great at blending other families. I was like, she's just been doing this for so long, as far as being in a blended family. And I was like, I'm part of a blended family, but they weren't in my life consistently. So I didn't have that same amount of experience that she had. So I learned so much from her and what she knew how to do. It's just incredible. And I'm like, this makes sense. And so my friends were like, oh, this makes sense now. Because a lot of us were like growing up alone with our grandparents or our parents, or our siblings were much older and they were away. And I had so many opportunities to learn from her. She was really great at teaching me so much about blended families. And I'm like, that's why. I'm like, this makes sense to me now. I'm like, who would want to, get in a family that's so just this size off the rip? And I was like, she's been in a big family her whole life. It just makes sense. So yes, 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 yes. Understanding that we want our husbands to win matters. This is a quote that I created. Our marriage is as strong as we decide to make it, and it's ours. No one has a say in it, in the matter, outside of us. So, and knowing that positive self-talk never hurt me. However, negative self-talk has always hurt me every single time. And yes, once again, I want to thank you all so much for attending this webinar for myself, Coach Fatimah, on how to share your husband without destroying your marriage. Remember that investing in you is always priceless. Guys, if you are interested in living a life of fulfillment, make sure you visit me at learnwithcoachfatimah.com and start your nourishing fulfillment journey today. So, again, I thank you guys so much for your kind words. You guys have had so much kindness in the chat and so many hearts, and thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate it. This webinar has indeed come to a close. um, I really know full well, because I know for me, I really understand how difficult it is to show up in these spaces. And just know that if you all are interested in having a safe space in order to talk and connect, make sure you go to our polygamy education.com. That's our polygamy campus, our OPR campus, where we continue education there. We have meet and greets. We have live classes that Coach Nyla and I conduct every week. I have Quintessential Queens, which is live on YouTube and on Facebook. And she has Polygyny and Chat every Saturday, and her webinar as well about jealousy, how to get a grip on your marriage, how to get a grip so your marriage won't slip, every Saturday as well. Make sure you also are watching our videos on YouTube and on Facebook, because I'm telling you, some people want to play teams and just, watch my videos or just watch her videos or Coach Nazir's videos. I'm telling you, when you watch all of our videos, you will get so much information. I had to know what it was like for subsequent wives. So watching her videos has indeed helped. And we have our Co-Wives Chatting on the Couch podcast as well. And it's really been nice to learn from her and her perspective, because so many subsequent wives get shut down and people don't want to hear what they have to say. But absolutely, they have a story to tell, and their story matters. If you are interested in coaching and counseling, check me out at coachfatimah.com or Coach Nyla at coachnyla.com for details on that. I'm going to be ending this cast. Ramadan Mubarak to those of you that are fast. May your fast be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will be ending this live cast as it's time for my family. It's been long since time for them to have iftar, and they broke the fast a long time ago, about an hour or so ago, or a little bit less. I'm going to join them. Make sure that you guys go over the information and go on YouTube, become a member of our OPR campus, but you're going to visit us at polygamyeducationcampus.com for those details as well. I will see you guys in the next one for next week. And again, thank you so much. And we're going to just keep on having this conversation, because as long as we keep the conversation going, then more people will talk about it. And then our support system and our group will expand, because this is going to be the new normal. I think polygyny is going to be the new normal. And maybe some people don't want to hear that, but it has to be said. And make sure you guys are picking up your Polygamy Roadmap ebook that we have at polygamyroadmap.com for details as well. There's one for men. There's one for women too. So you're going to want to make sure you pick that up, because this is such great information. And if you are someone that is new to polygyny, you're definitely going to want to pick that up. So many women have found it beneficial. So many men have found it beneficial as well. I encourage women, if your husbands are interested in polygyny, let him pick up that Polygamy Roadmap ebook that Coach Nazir actually created. And again, Coach Nyla and I created one for women. So we really enjoyed it, and so many women are enjoying it as well. I hope to see you guys next week. Thank you for joining. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I will see you guys in the next one. Ramadan Mubarak. I'm going to leave you with some GLC, and make sure you guys comment, like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and hit that notification bell, because you want to know when we go live and we have our webinars and everything like that, and when we upload. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure you guys are growing intentionally, loving, fearlessly, and connecting on a higher level every single day. I'm Coach Fatimah. I'll see you guys in the next one. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace. I'm Coach Fatimah, one of the co-founders of Outstanding Personal Relationships. And I'm here to talk to you about the Nourishing Fulfillment Counseling Program. What I do is help women from all walks of life obtain information in the areas of relationship wellness, emotional resilience, self-confidence, and inner discovery for best results for their future success. Growth is about implementation for best practices, for best results for your future. So the Nourishing Fulfillment Counseling Program is here for you to help you kind of weed through some of those negative thoughts of self-limiting beliefs so that you can move forward and attain your goals so that you live a truly fulfilling life. So if you want to join me for my Nourishing Fulfillment Counseling Program, be sure that you visit me at CoachFatimah.com for details and start your Nourishing Fulfillment Counseling session today. I'll see you and I look forward to working with you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.